Good morning, and it's good to see you all here today. Well, we have been doing kind of a whirlwind through the life and times and poetry of Saigyo, a 12th century Japanese poet who was a Buddhist monk. Um, and I'd like to today just kind of focus on one of his poems because it brings up a lot. And we'll explore it a bit in more depth. And the poem I've chosen has a little intro by Saigyo. On that chapter of the Lotus Sutra called Duration of the Life of the Tathagata, Duration of the Life of the Tathagata. Um, I'll mention at this point that the Buddha often, not always, but often referred to himself not using first person pronouns, but a third person label. And one of them he used was the Tathagata, which can be translated thus gone one or thus come one. And you might think at first that that's kind of an affectation that, it's somebody that, like the royal, royal we or something like this. But another interpretation of that is that the Buddha thoroughly understood rather the what he referred to as the conceit of I am, of separating oneself from everything else, creating a special category of I. And as a result, he referred to other people in the third person and also himself in the third person and used the label Tathagata. And you could say, well, he's gone from what? Gone forth from the worldly life into the monastic life or the life of a spiritual seeker, or he's gone beyond viewing the world in the usual way. Or if you say the thus come one, he's one who has come to teach, to share what wisdom he has gleaned. But in any case, he refers to himself as the Tathagata at times. On that chapter of the Lotus Sutra called the Duration of the Life of the Tathagata, those who view the moon over Vulture Peak as one now sunk below the horizon are those whose minds confused hold the real darkness. Those who view the moon over Vulture Peak as one now sunk below the horizon are those whose minds confused hold the real darkness. So when he's talking, when he refers to Vulture Peak, that is a location in northern India, sort of a small high plateau on the side of a mountain, where the Buddha, the historical Buddha, gave talks to crowds of people. It's sometimes called Holy Eagle Peak. It depends on the translation, but the more common translation is Vulture Peak. So this this poem refers to a chapter in the Lotus Sutra. The Lotus Sutra is something we talked about at length, I think, last year. And one of the chapters is the one that Saigyo is referring to. The Lotus Sutra, we don't know when it was actually composed or put to paper or whatever. Uh, Many believe that it was some of the later teachings of the Buddha that came to light after in the early Common Era around 100 CE. And others think that it was composed by followers of the Buddha who were involved in the process of evolving the teachings, applying them to uh, their situation and their experience. In any case, it is a text that is widely studied in China, Japan, Korea, and of course now in North America and Europe, where people study Mahayana Buddhism. South America as well. But I thought I would read sections from this chapter that the poem refers to because the poem makes more sense with this background. So the Buddha is talking to a group of people in this chapter, and the chapter is entitled "The Lifespan of the Eternal Tathagata," or the lifespan of the timeless Tathagata. And in this translation, it goes like this: Good children, the sutras expounded by the Tathagata are all for the purpose of liberating living beings. I may speak of myself, I may speak of someone else. I may appear as myself, I may appear as someone else. I may appear through my own deeds, I may appear through someone else's deeds. And whatever I teach and whatever I say is valid and never in vain. Why is this? The Tathagata perceives the character of the threefold world as it really is. Birth and death do not leave it or appear in it. There is no staying in the world or departing from it for extinguishment. It is neither substantial nor insubstantial, and it is neither thus nor otherwise. This is not how the threefold world sees itself, but the Tathagata sees such things as these clearly and without error. The Tathagata sees such things as these clearly and without error, because all living beings have various natures, various desires, various behaviors, and various thoughts and biases. In my desire to enable them to nurture their roots of goodness, I have expounded many different teachings, employing various words and terms, parables, and examples from the past. I have never abandoned the work of a Buddha, not even for a moment. In such manner, a vast expanse of time has passed since I became Buddha, and the lifespan of innumerable eons is lasting and never extinguished. Good children, the lifespan I gained through my long practice of the Bodhisattva way is still unending and will continue for twice the duration that I have described before. Thus, I am actually not now passing away, despite my proclamations that I will take the course of extinguishment. These are the skillful means used by the Tathagata to teach and transform living beings. Why is this? If the Buddha abides long in the world, people with meager virtue will not cultivate their roots of goodness. Lowly and impoverished and greedily clinging to the five desires, they will become enmeshed in assumptions and wrong views. If they see the Tathagata as ever abiding and not passing away, they will then become complacent, self-indulgent, lazy, jaded, incapable of conceiving that he is difficult to encounter and unable to hold him in reverence. Therefore, the Tathagata employs skillful means in saying, "Know, monks, that the Buddha's appearance in the world is a rare occurrence, difficult to encounter." Why is this? Even if after countless hundreds of thousands of millions of eons, some people of meager virtue might see a Buddha, while others might not. For this reason, I say, monks at Tathagata can only rarely be seen. All of those living beings who hear me say such things, will certainly imagine the difficulty of encountering a Buddha and cherish and long for one, looking up with thirsting hearts. Then they will plant roots of goodness. And that is why, although the Tathagata does not actually pass away, he says that he does. So, the Lotus Sutra, shocking in many ways, but in this instance reveals that the Buddha actually is engaged in some mind tricks. If the Buddha thought that Buddhas were everywhere and easily encountered, or if people thought such things, if they thought that Buddhas were everywhere and easily encountered, then they would take it all for granted and procrastinate, push things off, and not really pay attention. Whereas if people think that these teachings are rare and Buddhas are few, then they'll pay more attention. So, this brings up, I guess, the great question of, what is Buddha? I guess the common view is that the Buddha was a sage, of course, a human being like us who was actually gifted with some special wisdom. He was sort of like a super life coach who could help you um, avoid suffering by giving you endless tips on what to do and what not to do. And that's one way of viewing the Buddha. But another way that became more common as Buddhism passed into China and beyond, and the Mahayana Buddhism, the Mahayana branch of Buddhism, expanded and the literature compounded, was more of a transcendental view of the Buddha. The Buddha becomes somewhat timeless beyond time and space. The Buddha becomes more of a personification of the Dharma, more identified with the Dharma. So what's the Dharma? Well, as you probably know, the Dharma is used in different ways in Buddhist literature. And it's not a new term coined by the Buddha. It's a term that predated the Buddha considerably. In the Vedic literature, the Dharma in some ways refers to kind of a cosmic order, a law of nature, the way the universe actually is, that is not random and chaotic, but has an order to it that we may or may not understand. But the Buddha becomes a personification of this cosmic order, someone aligned with it through his efforts, through whatever gifts he may have received, through whatever happenstance, he has become aligned with this cosmic order. And the cosmic order implies a certain moral order. The Buddha teaching that certain behaviors, certain things we do or don't do, are associated with predictable effects. And thus we have the teachings about the precepts and not killing, not stealing, not lying, not engaging in sexual misconduct, and keeping the mind clear. So Dharma is used in that very expansive way. It's also used as just a way to refer to the Buddha's teachings, those things that are written down and passed on. And sometimes Dharma is referred to just phenomena in the world around us, just the objects that we encounter, dharmas. But the big D Dharma usually refers to this, what we might call cosmic order. Dogen, the 12th century founder of the Soto Zen tradition, who lived, the 13th century. He lived a century after Saigyo. He often used the compound Buddha Dharma. And expressed that the Buddha Dharma was all pervasive, everywhere, that mountains and rivers spoke the Buddha Dharma, that trees and grasses, pebbles and stones and walls spoke the Buddha Dharma. That this messy, seemingly chaotic, crazy world we live in is all Buddha Dharma for those who can see it. Closely related to this is the notion of Buddha nature and the idea that we are all gifted with Buddha nature, which is the opportunity to perceive the Buddha Dharma, to perceive things with the eye of a Buddha, and the opportunity to play our part in this amazing circumstance we find ourselves in. Buddha nature also includes the notion of kind of an internal compass that can guide us, sometimes in ways that we don't really understand, guide us a kind of internal compass guiding toward compassion and wisdom to help us align with the Dharma, the cosmic order. So, Saigyo, again, I'll return to the verse. Those who view the moon over Vulture Peak as one now sunk below the horizon are those whose minds confuse hold the real darkness. So viewing the notion of the Buddha as simply a sage who lived and died, was cremated, and is gone below the horizon, disappeared from our experience. Live, as Saigyo says, in darkness. So this short poem is a reflection of the Mahayana notion of a more transcendental Buddha. And with this notion, we can potentially find Buddhas everywhere. We can find them in the shopping market line or just in our day-to-day encounters. We can find them in a walk in the woods. And it raises the question, was Socrates a Buddha? Was Maria Teresa a Buddha? We don't know. But this chapter of the Lotus Sutra and this poem by Saigyo invites us to take a more expansive view. So I think it's important to consider these things. One of the sort of the basic principles of Buddhism is to take refuge, in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. What exactly are we taking refuge in? What is Buddha? I'll leave you with that, and we'll go into breakout rooms. Thank you very much for listening this morning.